Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Thank God it's Friday, but in particular, a special Friday, Good Friday. So, saying to Christians all over the country, all over the world, a happy Good Friday. It's actually, it depends. It's a bad Friday. Indeed, there are some who do call it that. Some call it a sad Friday, I believe, in Germany. But then, Christians know why it's a Good Friday. Without it, we can't have Easter Monday. The long and short of it is that in his infinite mercies, God mopped up the sins of mankind, and he willingly submitted himself for that sacrifice. And so it's a Good Friday. Monday to be followed by on Monday with Good Friday. And talking about the word good, first of all, let me introduce my guest, Mr. Kayode Oyedeji. Mr. Oyedeji is an economist. He's not a stranger to the house. A fine morning to you, and Good Friday.
I wish you the same Good Friday to you, Chokori.
Indeed, indeed. Still talking about good things, I guess you can say that in relation to the Naira as well. Because good things are happening to the Naira. There are people who will say that there's more room. There's more room for us to say more, let it get better and better. But comparing with where we've been for some time, it is indeed important. The Naira has been appreciating against the dollar, and that's always good news. There was a time when we were really, maybe those of us that weren't economists were really deeply concerned when the Naira was approaching 2,000 to the Naira. And we are saying, is the world coming to an end? But here we are now. It's being drawn back. We're looking at somewhere between 1,200 and 1,400, as the case may be. You'll explain that a bit further. We also, maybe just to kick it off, there was an address by the CBN governor on the monetary policy rate. It's tangentially concerned with this, but let's look at that report before we come back to studio and talk with our specialist.
The committee's decisions are as follows.
The CBN governor says the new interest rate is a leap from the 22.7% announced by the MPC about a month ago and the second rate hike by the current committee. Mr. Cardoso also announced the retention of the cash reserve ratio of deposit money banks at 45%.
Raise the MPR by 200 basis points to 24.75 from 22.75%. 2. Adjust the asymmetric corridor around the MPR at plus 100 to minus 300 basis points. These considerations underscore the importance of the CBN's commitment to the price stability mandate and the need to urgently bring inflation under control to ensure that purchasing power of ordinary Nigerians is restored in the short to medium term.
On the rising inflation, the CBN governor assured that it will significantly drop by December, and he also acknowledged the effort of law enforcement agency in tackling issues of illegal forex transactions.
On this note, members commended the ongoing efforts of the federal government towards addressing food insecurity. Some of these measures include the provision of various palliatives, release of grains from the strategic reserves. The law enforcement agencies, of course, are now looking into those transactions that are, as far as we're concerned, not valid to be paid.
The next Monetary Policy Committee meeting will be in the month of May. Ademola Lawrence, TVC News, Abuja.
Okay, not to confuse the issue, because we did want to look at Naira appreciating further against the issue, and that doesn't, directly impact on this. The whole monetary scenario, it has very many different tangential corridors, and this was one of them. It doesn't really apply as much as to what we're going to talk about now, because it's about the Naira appreciating. Perhaps, this has been, this appreciation, you see, I was going to ask you about this because we've been hearing that, look, for the situation to improve, then the industries, trade has to get better, and those were not things that you could do in the short term. So it was cheering news to hear this now, that following some moves by the central bank, you know, following some policies, we'll talk about those sort of in the nature of reforms. That has been what has led to the good news that we're talking about now. Now, I imagine key among those, if I look at it here, there's this unification of exchange rate windows. Tell us about that, the unification of the exchange rate windows. We're talking about the formal, if you want, legal, you know, window, and the so-called black market.
I think we should all heave a sigh of relief. We are not getting into more trouble, and CBN is beginning to take charge of the monetary system, especially the foreign exchange. Over the years, CBN has always been the dominant player in the sector. Unfortunately, towards the tail end of the last regime, lost that capability, lost control of the markets. And when government came in and said, oh, we're going to put the Naira on a free float, let market forces determine the value of the Naira, it became a turbulent world, a very difficult world for government to manage. And what did we have? We discovered that Naira was turned into a commodity, and people started speculating, making huge sums of money from it. In actual fact, they created a bubble, a bust. It has turned to a bust now. Naira went to as far as 1,900.
Yes.
And people started saying it's going to cross 2,000 margin, then it's going to, some people even said, a political economist said it may get to 10,000 Naira. So, I will call him the prophet of doom. He's a renowned economist. But that shows the level of anxiety people had and the extent of how the economy became so precarious that nobody wanted to touch the Naira. But the CBN has demonstrated capability. The CBN has shown that every problem has a solution. It becomes a big problem when you fold your hands and allow the system to be hijacked by all kinds of people. CBN has taken possession of that, of its the ownership of the market. It has exerted its responsibility. It's showing that this is the direction, these are the goals, these are the objectives, this is where we want to be, and these are the things, the terms with which we should work with. And
when you say that, let me just get some clarity on that. When you say that it's like the CBN now is playing its role, at least that part of its role where it needs to be hands-on. Because you also spoke a bit earlier about let market forces dominate. But again, I've heard you economists say from time to time that, wait a minute, market forces, so far so good. At certain stage, CBN has a duty to come in. So what went on here?
You know, before, the practice which we had was CBN defending the Naira, intervening at different positions, making sure there is enough supply. CBN has not dumped that responsibility entirely. CBN is saying the market should determine, but will not spend money out of what is expected to defend the Naira or put it in a particular range or whatever. CBN is a dominant player in that sector because it holds huge war chest to be able to continue from time to time to play its role in such a way that the economic objective of the government will be achieved. So one of the things CBN tried to do from inception, back to what you said earlier, is to make sure there is a convergence in the markets. There is no difference within the two major dominant markets, the regulated markets and the black markets, which is an anomaly on its own anyway. So CBN has been able to bridge that gap. As a matter of fact, today, the black market is cheaper than the government-regulated markets, which is a plus because we have huge money, huge foreign exchange coming from diasporas all over the world. Nobody will go to the black markets now. The value is in government-regulated markets. So government is going to continue to aggregate a lot of foreign exchange with which it can be able to channel the economy along a particular direction which will satisfy government fiscal and monetary objectives. So they've been able to achieve that convergence between the two markets. You can't buy from government take it to the black market to become an overnight millionaire. So that's being taken care of. Big loss to the CBN. And they are doing a whole lot of things. The issue now is, how did they achieve what we thought was a doom for Nigeria?
Yes.
They thought,
including, sir, sorry, including, I'm saying here, a clearance of the foreign exchange backlock obligations to banks.
So what CBN has been able to do is to look at where do we get foreign exchange. The one we got in the past, what happened to them? How were they spirited out of the system? They're able to say, okay, if we have this in the banking system, let's make it available as a float for the markets. The oil companies, for instance, the major oil companies, the JV partners, don't take all your money abroad. Retain 50% of your proceeds in Nigeria. That also form part of what the CBN can use to manage the foreign exchange system very well. Then a lot of other factors. There were about 5,000 borrow to change that were inactive. They were just being used to siphon money from the system. They just buy and sell to God knows what, who. So they've been able to streamline all this. 4,000 of them have been taken out of the markets. And now CBN is saying we're also making more money from oil. Oil output has improved. Government is making more money, making more dollars from oil operations. In addition to that, they're beginning to put their instruments into the market to attract foreign investment. Our open market operations are back. They're active. Foreigners are the dominant players. When they come with their portfolio investment, they are coming with dollars. They are not coming with Naira. So we are beginning to hold a stock of convertible currency that can make CBN to improve on the supply of foreign exchange to the markets.
And that immediately begins to impact because it's not as scarce as it used to be. And what's also this thing that is referred to as removal of the daily cap of 2 billion Naira on remunerable standing deposit facilities?
That's also really working, helping your government to make sure, CBN to make sure that people are not pushed out of the markets, looking for way to outside the regulated market, looking for dollar and black markets, trying to play games with the markets. People are beginning to see that every transaction you have to do, legal transaction can be accommodated within the monetary system, within the regulated channels, within the banking system, or through the bureau de change. And the government is funding virtually all these channels. Bureau de change were giving, for instance, $20,000 at a point. They were asked to trade within 1.5% margin or thereabouts.
Yes.
So at the end of the day,
before, when they could do anything that
they could only take about half of that, really, because their requirement for filing, their regulatory requirement for who you can sell to and what they can use it for. So at the end of the day, they were only able to take about $10,000 or thereabouts. So we are beginning to see the economy, the foreign exchange market, in an entirely different form, the way it should be. The CBN is beginning to play its big role, regulating the system, providing incentives for effective trading, effective transactions within the system. So it's not whole yet. We are not yet where we should be, but we are beginning to see signs of recovery. We are beginning to see that we've made progress, and we're able to intensify on those policies. Will make a lot of gains, and Naira will recover its value.
Let me ask a simplistic question. So what was preventing this state of affairs from being in the previous administration, for instance?
Well, it's still a mystery to many onlookers, and a lot of corruption from what we can see, from facts being put into the public space. Corruption, ineptitude, inefficiency, lack of decency in governance. These things have impacted negatively on the ability of the CBN to play its role as lenders, as a regulator, as provider of foreign exchange. You know, it got to a point that we could barely account for oil proceeds in Nigeria. It was like Nigeria was not making anything from oil. But now they've been able to streamline the process and say oil proceeds goes directly to the CBN. It's not going to be tampered with at the NNPC level. Whatever comes in is coming to will be domiciled with the CBN. So government has been able to stamp its authority on the system. What government now needs to do is to continue to reinvent the system and begin to work on the fiscal side of the economy in such a way that the gains should be fully harnessed.
Okay. What's the focus that we hear is now in operation on a willing buyer, willing seller kind of a scheme? And how is that different from before?
You know, we talked about market forces.
Yes.
Demand and supply, as simple as it is. When demand is high and supply is low, prices will go up. But what CBN has been able to do is to work on the supply side in such a way that government can, or the CBN on its own, can ensure that demand is not necessarily far higher than supply. So when that comes to willing buyer, willing seller, you want to say, I want to buy, I want to sell, we handshake at the point of equilibrium. And that equilibrium is not at a disadvantage to government or to either of the party, because if you need this, government is saying we can provide it. Unlike before, when I need it, I can't get it, then price started to skyrocket. But that has changed.
And the middleman margin?
The middleman margin, everything has been wiped off. CBN is playing a strategic position of the regulator and the player in the sector. CBN has a war chest. It's the custodian of foreign exchange in Nigeria. It's making sure that demand does not necessarily outgrow supply, so that we don't have this equilibrium and we don't have price soaring like we've had in the last 6 months or thereabouts. So it's good for Nigeria. We are at a turning point. We have to make sure we continue to push, make sure that every kobo from oil is properly accounted for, which is a main source of, then making sure that we also buy Nigeria. People are beginning to embrace that willingly. People are getting excited about it. And if you look at the trend in the last 3-6 months or thereabouts, people no longer dream of going abroad to study. It's beyond the reach of the middle class. People no longer think of holiday abroad. They're beginning to look at places in Nigeria where they can go and rest and catch some fun. People are not even thinking of medical tourism. It's beyond the reach of the middle class. So the few can afford it at the money bags, and people who are directly or indirectly related to national votes, to national treasury. And now the honors or the responsibilities on the government to make sure that you also tighten up that side. The more you're able to tighten up, the less the demand on foreign exchange. So by and large, demand for foreign exchange, especially before the summer rush will come, is likely to continue to decline. CBN should take advantage of that to consolidate on its position, draw the Naira back as much as possible. I don't fancy drastic drop in the value of Naira, whatever. I prefer a steady, rapid growth in the value of the Naira. The way you have volatility, it's dropping so progressively, it's not always in the interest of the markets. You begin to see more volatility cause for unnecessary trading activities. So gradually it will stabilize. Gradually it will get to a point where investors will have confidence to come into Nigeria. They know there is stability in exchange rates. Then you have steady growth. The budget benchmark for this year is 800 Naira. I don't know if government still very keen about that position, because if you are getting 1,200 Naira, for instance, and you have to get 800, it's also a disincentive to government, because the value, the Naira receipt of the Federation account will decline. But I don't think government should be myopic. Government should look at the larger interest of the economy, continue to push, continue to sanitize the system, continue to make sure that you encourage people to buy Nigeria. Think about that too. Some people are even dumping mobile lines and saying, no, we are only buying indigenous lines, just to make sure that they don't make money from Nigeria, repatriate it to their own country, and begin to suffer the consequences. So the action should be multifaceted. CBN should continue to streamline the system, get the banks to avoid anything that would be inimical to their operations, no more foreign exchange deals to make excess profits, begin to look at the anti-graft institutions, tightening up on politicians, on public officers, especially at the state levels, where the governors junket the whole world and they bring nothing, where they spend money as if they are minting money, where their children live like lots of the manor. They steal a lot of money from the system. You hardly see projects, you hardly see anything. Most states are collecting 3 times what they were collecting before May 29. People should be able to say, where is the system to make sure that this money is not stolen? And for whatever reason, whatever is stolen in Nigeria, the bulk of it goes abroad for God knows what.
That's the unfortunate.
They take it abroad to live large, the kind of lifestyle they can't imagine in Nigeria. They begin to do all kinds of things abroad, flying private jet and all the stuff. And they are not creating that value at home to justify that kind of,
and all of
larger than life.
And all of that could happen